So welcome, guys. Welcome to the All Good Media podcast. Today I have Lisa Fortin on the show. I'm so excited to have you on, Lisa. I originally met you it's almost been a year now since my mom came into your clinic. And the more that I've learned about ReYouvenate, the more I've just been blown away by what it is that you offer. I had your husband Lance on the show, and we had some awesome conversations. And just your lifestyle, your approach to what it is that you're doing has just been really inspiring to me.
Thank you.
And yeah, today I just wanted to go back in time and talk about sort of what it was that led you, because you've been in the medical industry for
12 plus years.
12 plus years, yeah. And with radiology, is that correct?
Right, that was my first career in medicine.
Yeah, so what brought you to radiology? What was the...
My course is a little bit, atypical, and it really starts back in undergraduate. I think that all has a pertinent, part in this. So I was an undergrad for biotechnology. I really wanted to work in a crime lab. I was really into science, and forensics, detective kind of work was really interesting to me, and I wanted something that would keep my attention at all times. So I went through biotechnology, and in those 4 years,
Was that from a really young age, or when you were in high school?
About in high school. Okay. And I can do a shout out to Mr. Clark, my science teacher, for that one. Shout out to Mr. Clark. In high school, I really cultivated this science path. Went into biotechnology and learned just a ton about the cellular health, how do cells function, all about the way that they replicate, the way that they repair themselves when there's a mistaken replication or there's damage from the environment, how do they repair, what happens as they age and become senescent cells, how cells interact with cells, and how the environment affects the cells.
So breaking it down, the body and our environment to its most core level as a cell?
Yes. Yeah. So biotechnology is all about, just learning about actually us at a cellular level.
Okay.
And with that, I can, I know how to do gene editing, gene splicing, all of those things as well. So really wanted to stay away from that aspect of it because I had a lot of concerns about that. But it's easy to do. And when I went finally to a state police crime lab to visit in my senior year, thought, whoa, this is actually not for me. A lot of mundane, same work day to day. And although it's interesting from the outside, the people who are doing it might, I'm sure they enjoy it, but that wasn't for me. So thought, wow, this is my senior year. I don't want to be in a lab doing bench work. I know how hard it is to get, IRB approvals, to get NIH funding. And I thought, I don't want somebody to be telling me what I can research by funding me for that, rather than just being a free researcher. So
what would be a typical A to B in that job? For
a researcher?
Yeah.
So eventually I would have escalated to a principal investigator, which means you're in charge of a lab.
Okay.
You can I could have had an interest maybe in UV radiation and how it affects DNA and repair. But from there you have to get funding. So it's a laborious job of applying for grants and worrying about funding. Then when your funding runs out, you've got to either come up with a new project or find somebody who will still fund what you're already started, or otherwise it just ends.
Gotcha.
So it's very difficult, and I didn't like that side of it.
But you were from the research side of it, not so much of showing up at the crime scene, collecting things forensically. You were doing so what types of research were you doing right before you left?
So I did tabletop bench work, basically. So PCR, ELISAs, and then the DNA sort of editing, splicing, and cutting out proteins and that sort of thing.
Okay, but you decided to not take that path.
Yeah, so my senior year, I decided that's not for me, and then I said I did pretty well in undergrad, so I would go, I had a love of science and biology, and I also am a very empathetic person, so I have this caring kind of nurturing thing, so I thought, maybe medicine is for me then. So it takes a year to apply to medical school, which gave me a year off of schooling, where I did neurosurgery research for a year at Henry Ford Hospital.
Wow.
So this was a great experience for me. I was truly doing bench work, realizing I do not want to be writing the same thing every day in my laboratory book and performing the same, experiments day after day. I was really good at it, but that was not that didn't pique my interest enough that I could have a lifelong career with this. But at the same time, because I was applying to medical school, the neurosurgeons and the neurologists I was working with really knew I was interested and sort of took me under their wing. So I got to go do some clinical consults with them, meet some patients that I had seen their imaging and their brain tumors. The neatest thing was going into surgery with a neurosurgeon. I was the one when they would wake people up during surgery to map out their motor strip and make sure we weren't going to give them a big dysfunction, who would say, can you move your left arm? Can you do this? So really an amazing experience for me then. And also learned about kind of the advanced technologies that we have to offer people. So back then they were doing stealth MRI, it's called, where they were putting a halo on the person while they were getting the MRI. And then during the surgery, they would put the same halo device on. And then we had sort of a little GPS probe, which would correlate the coordinates to the MRI of where the coordinates were truly in space. So you could look at the MRI and you would be heading down in the brain as you're moving this probe down. So there's the margin of the tumor. So we can see right where it goes. So I thought, this is just amazing. The imaging bit of it, the advanced bit of it, more that I ever expected to be exposed to in medicine.
And so that was your own natural inclination to apply. Did you have some role models at that time, or people that were
for
saying,
medicine?
maybe you should try medicine, or was that just?
No, actually. So, kind of the first in my family to graduate from college.
Okay.
So that was that. I went to Ferris State University, which is really a good pharmacy optometry science-based school, and they don't really necessarily have pre-med. So I just found some of my instructors. My organic instructor was kind of my favorite, and I said, can you help me get through this? And that was, yes, you have to take the MCAT, and okay, when is it? It's in 4 weeks, that sort of thing.
Wow.
So really kind of a rush, but I made it through that, and so things are meant to be, they work out, that sort of thing. But going on, when I finally got accepted, I went to Wayne State University for medicine. So that's another 4 years. During that time, I explored different options in medicine, because now finally made a decision to become a medical doctor. Now you have to decide what type do you want to be. So I explored family medicine. I really loved dermatology and really went quite far in the dermatology tract. And that ended my senior year when I rotated in radiology. So I took this radiology elective as this will be an easy elective. Okay. I've already got all my applications in for derm. I can just kind of coast through this month. And what happened was I fell in love with radiology because it incorporated all my desires in a job. So I loved to teach. I was actually a student teacher for a year, my senior year. And I loved, science, investigating, detective work, and radiology to me is just, here you are, take a look through the human body and tell us what's wrong. It's a lot of detective work,
Yeah, exactly.
So
bringing you back to what you...
Yes, it incorporated everything. And then I had a real desire to do an academic track when I first started. So I would be teaching residents, I'd be teaching medical students, and all through my residency, I was able to do that too. So it kind of incorporated everything. So I made this last minute decision, and although all my application was for dermatology, called a bunch of the radiology schools and asked, would you accept my application? And was lucky enough to place at Henry Ford Hospital also. Wow, nice. So did a 5-year radiology residency and dove deep through medicine. So biotechnology gave me a complete understanding of the cell. Medicine, obviously, of the body and the disease process. And radiology was really amazing to me because you get an inside look at the body, but also you see how the body is affected by disease, degeneration, injury, cancer, and how it's able to repair and regenerate. So it was quite, this is sort of a full circle understanding of the body. Yeah. And this all plays into how we formed the clinic for ReYouvenate. So then I went on after my 5-year radiology residency. I did an abdominal imaging and intervention fellowship in Boston at Beth Israel. And there I was honing in on my kind of advanced interventional skills. So we were doing cryoablation, RF ablation, and microwave ablation of tumors, which is freezing them, burning them, or microwaving them.
Wow.
So some really more advanced things that were neat.
For something like that, then you would go in and remove it? Or would you
No,
just,
so
would
these
the body
patients, yeah, this is really neat. So if they're not a surgical candidate, or if they have maybe 2 liver mets, and for quality of life, it would be great to get rid of those. They only have 1 or 2 mets and nothing else. So we could just percutaneously, which means through the skin, place a probe in there. And then if it's cryoablation, you form like a 3-centimeter ice ball, which kind of just freezes the tumor, and it breaks all the cells and makes them die.
Wow.
And then all of the normal tissue around that is okay. You just have
Your
that 3
body will
centimeters.
just kind of naturally...
Yep, and then it goes to this necrotic phase where it kind of liquefies and your body resorbs it, and it just either forms like a calcification or some sort of little scar there.
Okay.
But those patients, some of them could go home the same day. Some of them stayed 1 night in the hospital and went home and had hardly a recovery as compared to surgery. So it was really a neat thing to be able to do.
Wow.
And then I took a job with a radiology group up here in Petoskey, and was with that group for nearly 6 years, actually. And then in 2017, 2 neat things happened. I became chief of radiology at McLaren. And the second thing was we went through negotiations for a contract while I was chief. So what this did is opened up my eyes to... the reason that I went to Boston to finish, which was difficult because my husband and I had 3 of our children during residency. So we were moving with 3 young kids, and in Boston I was pregnant again. So it was difficult to be away from family and support for that year. I was working like 60 plus hours a week in fellowship. So what I did that for was to have a really strong resume so that we could choose where we wanted to live rather than our career dictating that. So we wanted to come back to Northern Michigan. That's where I was from. We wanted to raise our kids in this environment. So when we got the termination letter from, the hospital, I just felt that, wow, I put a lot into my career, and to not have job stability, I'm here, like, I'm panicking, I'm interviewing other places. I was quite rather distraught about that. So that's when now you have to rewind, because during all of this, my husband and I are lifelong learners. Before we started to have children, really got on this road to being healthy, which takes a long time to actually accomplish in a true sense. So we went on this quest to be healthy, and we just have done a ton of conferences, podcasts, and learning. And in all of that, have learned a great deal about nutrition and health in general, incorporating that with my medical knowledge, and then my cellular health knowledge on top of that. So along the way, we had a bunch of little kind of home units, which were unique. We had red light therapy, we had PEMF devices, little things. And we were able to get our kids all the way up to now, and I don't have any wood to knock on, but up to now without kind of any serious hospitalizations or illnesses. They've never had antibiotics. We've been really good to their microbiomes.
Yeah.
And then we started using this equipment on our family and friends, and just heard over and over, you and your husband have so much knowledge together. You should open up a clinic and let the community into some of that knowledge, So we heard it so often that when that letter came and we were going through all that turmoil, it was almost an open invitation to give the clinic a try. So do we want to stay in this community that we love, in this house that we love, and try to see how a clinic would go? So it is a regenerative medicine clinic, which not a lot of people know what that means. It's a unique medical clinic. It is not the same as a traditional medical office in any sense. So we were wondering, how well would the community support this, and how well will the word get out? So we opened part-time in September of 2017, and did Saturdays. If I was off at the hospital, I was there. And then if clients called up and needed me to be there, I would come after work and work some 5 to 7s until it got a little bit too much to juggle the 2 jobs. And when it picked up enough that we felt it would be supportive, we then took the leap. So I joined my second career in medicine and repurposed a lot of my radiology training and skills. I love interventional work, and I'm still able to do that through the clinic, through stem cell therapy and PRP. And, the ReYouvenate, the idea of ReYouvenate comes from focusing on cellular health. So the idea that if your cells are functioning well and healthy, then your tissues, your organs, your systems, sort of your being can be. If you don't get all the way down to that level, it's a lot of Band-Aid techniques that may give you a short-term gain, but aren't going to prevent you from re-injuring that in the future or, really fixing the problem.
Yeah, which I feel like is a lot of standard medical procedures are just all I can't say all, but going through that, I know we're kind of getting the story to ReYouvenate, and I want to jump back in at these time points a little bit. But for people that don't know what ReYouvenate offers in particular, what are some of the technologies that you brought in, or what was some of the first ones that you had started with that you were saying that you had worked on at home? And
okay, yeah. So yeah, when we initially started the clinic, what we did is took our favorite tools from home and upgraded to a clinical level system of those. So we have cold laser therapy is what it used to be called. Now it's called photobiomodulation, which is just a fancy word for using light to change biology, photobiomodulation. So we have the laser therapy, and we have pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. And we started with a sound wave therapy device called the medical wave. So each of these you can see are sort of unique devices, but all of them honestly are focusing on repairing cellular health and getting down to that cell level and working from that ground level up. And then we're able to do this without side effects. And there are a few kind of contraindications for some of them, but a lot of them, most people are able to go through and, get relief like that. So at the clinic, we don't prescribe any medications. It's a non-pharmaceutical clinic. And, there are sort of three pillars that we follow at the clinic, and cellular health is a big one. The advanced technologies are sort of an adjunct to get you to your goals faster.
Okay.
And then education is a big one. I think that if you can tell clients the what and the how, like this is what it is, this is how it affects you, then them actually going through and forming that partnership, which we form with all of our patients, partnership in health, they are much more likely to fulfill their end of that bargain if they have a complete understanding of what does it mean if I take pizza, and what is that going to do to my actual body if I'm eating pizza every day, that sort of thing. So a big part of it is educating as well.
And I imagine with your kids, like you said, they've grown up with this, that you've taken very good care of their biome, and how do you explain it to them? How do you explain the medical industry to them and what it is that you do? I feel like just to kind of, because from my background, I've heard that there are just Western medicine, it works when you need it, but it doesn't necessarily, it's more of, there's no prevention, or it's not preventative medicine. It's like, okay, we're going to fix this and then we'll see in a couple of weeks when it keeps happening, or we don't get to the root cause. And it sounds like you have this foundation in that, but then have decided to take it and you have applied it in a completely different way. So I wonder how clients find out about you, and then also how you kind of explain it to somebody that knows absolutely nothing about it.
Okay. Clients find out about us, by far the best is word of mouth. We've tried a lot of different avenues of advertising and marketing, and still at least 85% of our clients are getting referred by other clients that have been there. So word of mouth for us is a very strong way of getting the word out. And I actually just these past 2 weeks have tried to put myself out of the clinic and decide if another new medical clinic opened up in Petoskey, what would spark my interest about that clinic, right?
Yeah.
I would just assume this is another medical clinic, another primary care, come here when you've got the flu, that sort of clinic. So for me, I understand. And when people say, yeah, I was told by my neighbor, I was told by my friend at the gym and then somebody else, and finally I'm here. I said, that's completely, understandable, because most of them need to be told 2 or 3 times. They need to hear that, that it's worked for me. It's worked for me 2 or 3 times before they actually will come in.
Right.
And I think that is because of our initial concern of how will the community feel about this, how will they know about it, and will the word get out quick enough to support it, to keep it thriving. So definitely by far word of mouth. How it is explained, really, my clients, if I sit down in the office with them and I tell them I'm so focused on cellular health, and this is why, because your tissues, your organs, your systems, your being can be healthy if we can get your cells to function properly, it's almost like a light bulb goes off and they just say, that's great, like that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So we do explain it that way. Our mission is sort of to provide the tools necessary for you to repair, regenerate, thrive, and fuel your own mission. So what we want to do is get a bunch of healthy people out there. So, and Lance may have mentioned this, and he says it quite often, is just to get kind of health out of the conversation.
Right,
so we don't have to have the coffee hour where everybody's complaining about their knees and their backs. We can move on beyond that and talk about real things. That would be great for our, what we would love to do. So the explanation comes in first just sitting them down and explaining our theory, and second, when they come to the clinic and they get the treatments and they're realizing, like, this isn't something that's going to cause my my muscles to ache or my liver to elevate the enzymes because of a side effect, or whatever. There are tons of side effects from medications, and you touched on a good part. I think Western medicine is excellent at emergency medicine, at surgery, and when you need them, they're there, that sort of thing. But true preventative care is where we need some improvement.
Would you say that is the main domain of ReYouvenate is preventative? Or
yeah, it's a mix, actually. So most of the clients who find us are motivated by pain or some other motivating factor.
Yeah.
It's very hard to motivate people before they feel health decline. So it's there are a handful of people who are interested in anti-aging that may seek us out because of those, that avenue. But really, it's hard. It's so hard to get people motivated for their own health. They would take their dog to the vet before they would take themselves to the clinic. So that there has to be a motivating factor in most people.
What would you say to somebody that is saying that they're, I'll deal with it when it comes? What would you say to somebody that's like, well, I don't need to worry about it because
yes,
I'm healthy, or something, you know what I mean?
Right. Sometimes I would dig deep and see, are you truly healthy? Do you get tired at 3 p.m.? Do you sleep well? Do you feel brain fog? Do you have difficulty finding a word? Do you have a little bit of stiffness in the morning when you wake up? Those are early signs of aging. When did those wrinkles appear?
Yeah.
Aging occurs on the inside before it shows up on the outside. So I would just dig a little deep with them. And, that's my dream client would be somebody who's in their kind of 40s, really, when they just are getting those early signs of aging that are just creeping up, because they're going to have a little bit of motivation to say, wow, I don't want to go down that path. Or, somebody who's got strong family history of arthritis or diabetes or some sort of health problem where they think that they're destined to get this. And that's truly not, we know through epigenetics, you are not destined to the fate of what your genes tell you. There's, through environmental factors, you decide if you're going to turn on those genes or if you're going to leave them in a switched off position. So that's really, if you can capture people in that kind of early signs of aging phase, you can stop a lot of degeneration and, disease progression early, right, kind of in its tracks.
That's, it's incredible. And I feel like a lot of it is way over my head. So, and I think that some of my listeners are probably following along and know everything that you're saying, and some are not. And I think that we can simplify it to a point. That's why I was kind of, how would you explain it to a child, or how would you, because I think a lot of the things that, whether it's, this might be a funny example, but whether it's like a new song or a new thing that's going on, there's no way that it would come into our existence without us just hearing about it, or seeing, or having word of mouth, somebody talk about it to us. And a lot of what I've learned through the last couple months through Blake and through talking with you and Lance has exploded my curiosity around what it means to actually be healthy. Because you can think that just eating a salad is healthy, but if it's not something that benefits your body, it's not healthy, or Lance is talking about avocados. And what do you feel like are some of the really basic things that you do on a day-to-day basis that keep you in an optimum state of health?
Okay. So I do practice a morning routine. In my morning routine, we'll do, and Lance may have covered some of this in his podcast.
Not much. I don't think, yeah.
Okay. So he and I will do a breathing technique, which is sort of a meditative breathing, Wim Hof. And then following that, we'll do push-ups. So get a little bit of physical exercise. Then we'll do a nitric oxide and BDNF, which stands for brain derived neurotropic factor, 2-minute exercise. It's a very simple exercise where you do 4 different movements and you repeat them 3 to 4 times.
Okay.
So it takes about 2.5 minutes, and you get like a big release of nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, and a big release of BDNF, which is responsible for connecting new nerve tissue. So it's neurogenesis, new nerve tissue growth, and connections in the brain. So we're doing it for brain health. We're doing it for cardiovascular health.
What types of exercises?
So there's 4 of them you do. The first one is sort of a squat, where you squat and put your arms forward. And then when you stand up, you put your arms down. And you're going to do these as fast as you can. Okay. And you do 10 to 12 reps of that. Then the second one is where you just have your arm straight out in front of you. So one arm is straight out and the other one's down. And you just alternate those up and down.
Okay.
And 10 to 12 of those. And then you do non-jumping jumping jacks. So your arms are moving, but your legs are not. So, and you have to, it's important to swing them all the way so that they're hitting kind of at the top and at the bottom. And then the last one, I just call yay. I don't know what it's called. You just are putting your arms up and then pulling them down to about shoulder height, almost like you're doing an overhead bench press.
You're doing these fast.
Yes. Okay. Yep. So 10 to 12 of those. And then you repeat the sequence back to the squats, then the arm alternating, the non-jumping jumping jacks, and the yay. And you'll actually feel tingling in your fingers when you finish, and you know that you've released nitric oxide. That's the good, I've done it fast enough kind of clue. If you go, I think it's Dr. Zach Bush, or Dr. McCullough, they both have videos on YouTube about how to do this exercise, and it's super beneficial. You should do it 3 or 4 times throughout the day. So especially when I was in radiology and I had a very sedentary job. So I always stood up at my stand-up desk. This is more things that are just adding to how I do my healthy lifestyle. I always stood up, but even standing, if you're stationary, is not great for you either. Right. So moving around. So I would head to the bathroom and I would just do my BDNF exercises, wake myself back up. You kind of get a rush of energy at the same time. So the morning routine is those 3 things, almost every day. And then 4 days a week, I do a red light therapy sauna. So it's a near infrared sauna, clear light sauna with low EMFs. And so get out the toxins and get all the benefits of that. And then I will do pulsing, PEMF, which we'll probably get into a little bit. Yep. I'll do pulsing a few times a week. And then there's a very strong antioxidant breathing treatment that I'll do. So I know everybody doesn't have access to those types of things because that's through the clinic, but they could as a patient.
Right, exactly.
But there are ways to do, so our bodies age from inflammation. They've coined this term inflammaging now. So the chronic inflammation underlies most diseases. And so as much as I can mitigate, and I know, so in our environment, we're always kind of bombarded by a ton of stuff. And if you can drive yourself crazy thinking, avoid this, avoid this. So my theory is I'm going to avoid what I know I can avoid easily And then I'm going to fill up my bucket a lot slower in a way. Because when your bucket's full, you start overflowing, then that's when you're going to get into trouble with degeneration and disease. So I do an antioxidant at home, and it's a liquid collagen with an antioxidant in it. I don't do a lot of supplements overall. That one, I will take colostrum for my gut health because I had a gut permeability issue and about 4 pages of food allergies that I was working through. Wow. So repairing the gut. And leaky gut is very, very prevalent. So a lot of practitioners will say they just assume everybody who walks in their door has leaky gut. It's that prevalent. So the gut permeability issue is actually quite fascinating. So I'm going to take a segue quickly.
Yeah.
The gut, you need to have tight junctions between the cells. This is like the gatekeeper of, so our mouth is open to the environment. Everything we're putting in is open to the environment. And the intestine and that tract is responsible for keeping the environmental pathogens from inside our body, to keep the gates closed. When there's a lot of things that can lead to leaky gut, such as chronic constipation, alcohol, NSAIDs. If you take just 5 to 7 days in a row of over-the-counter non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like Tylenol, Advil, ibuprofen, then you've got leaky gut. And then, but the biggest culprit, I think, is probably glyphosate from Roundup. It's in all of our food supplies. Even if you're trying to be very good, non-GMO, organic, you're still getting glyphosate exposure. They just did a big study in California on organic wines, and almost all of them had at least some amount of glyphosate in them. Wow. Cheerios, a lot of the foods, like breakfast cereals, have a high content of them. And that really makes the gut permeability bad. So it breaks those tight junctions. And what happens when the tight junctions break is now you've got an opening, direct opening for viruses or bacteria to kind of leak into the bloodstream. But the other thing that happens is there's undigested food or incompletely digested food particles which can get in, which are called macromolecules, just means big molecules. They're not digested all the way to the amino acid components or whatever. So these macromolecules get in, and your body says, what is this? This is recognized as foreign. And what it does when it recognizes foreign, just like a virus, it's going to make antibodies against that foreign material and prepare itself to battle. And then there's a process called molecular mimicry, meaning this little bit of macromolecule is quite similar in appearance to your cartilage. So through that, your own antibodies start attacking your joints and you get rheumatoid arthritis, or your own antibodies start attacking your pancreas and you get diabetes, or your myelin, which is the insulation of the brain cells that allows the signal to go along, and then you get multiple sclerosis. So all of these autoimmune diseases, that's why a lot of clinicians say, like, this starts in the gut. So it's so important to keep those tight junctions, and that's what I do with the colostrum. So I have just a couple of things that I do daily like that.
So colostrum will work to prevent or to rebind?
Help to repair.
Okay.
And it also has a lot of amazing beneficial components in it for overall health and repair.
And so for people listening saying, oh, wow, I should get colostrum, what would you say? Is that something that you can safely take, or you would recommend talking to?
Yeah, it's actually fairly safe overall. And even people with lactose intolerance, because the way protein is removed is not in colostrum, it's the first milking, then they typically don't even react to the colostrum product. It's a fairly inert kind of thing for the human body.
Less detrimental than taking Tylenol that you could buy with it. Right, okay.
Yes. Yeah. And the colostrum, liposomal colostrum is the best. That's readily absorbed by the body. I get our colostrum for myself in the clinic through Sovereign Laboratories. It's a very good lab. Okay. So their cattle are, grass-fed, pasture-raised cattle. They aren't fed antibiotics, that sort of thing. No growth hormone.
So what is what is colostrum then at its core?
So it's the first milk.
Okay, that's what you're saying. It's the first milk.
Yeah. Okay. And it doesn't even look like milk. It's very kind of watery, but it has a ton of immunological factors. It has antibodies, which are very protective. It's the first milk that the baby gives to the mother gives to the baby. And when a baby is born, they don't have an immune system built up right now. So they need this passive immunity, it's called, from the mother's breast milk to help protect them.
Is there any other source that you could get it from?
The colostrum?
Yeah. or
it
some similar?
It has to be a mammal.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, just curious.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm glad you went on that like side, because I feel like there's a lot of those avenues, and we could literally go on for all day, because I'm so interested in learning more about this. And I feel like a lot of times it's kind of like I was saying, you can think that you're healthy and be eating, bread or eating things that are inflammatory. And so yeah, after your morning routine and your supplement, would you call that a supplement? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What are some other things? What types of I guess more, it could be just really general, just in terms of food or exercises or just.
Okay. Yeah. So, exercising, I'm just getting back into, going through all of that training and having our 4 children in a 5-year time span was very difficult on my body.
Yeah.
I had a lot of stress. I had, 8 years of sort of chronic fatigue, and, it was really hard on my body. I didn't realize, much like you say, that if you're eating inflammatory foods, it's something that's going to sneak up on you. You don't realize that the pizza you ate for lunch is giving you 3 p.m. brain fog and dump, of energy. Mm-hmm. You don't realize that, whatever kind of food intolerance you have, you keep subjecting yourself to, is causing this chronic inflammation, and eventually your body can't keep up with repair. Mm-hmm. So that's when you're going to degenerate and you're going to get into trouble. So yeah, after all of that training and stress and dealing with all of that, I did get into trouble. So I had gut permeability issues, the 4 pages of food allergies. I was allergic to every kind of meat, grapes, papaya, watermelon, cilantro. I mean, it just went on and on. So, and then I measured my telomeres on top of this. So your telomeres are sort of your cellular age in a way. You have your chronological age, and then how old are your cells at their core. And what the telomere is the DNA has all the replication material. And at the end of the DNA strand, there's a tiny little cap, very similar to like the shoelace, the hard part of the shoelace at the end. So imagine that getting shorter every time that we replicate our cells. And then when it's gone, your chromosome unravels, and you're not going to go on.
It's hard to lace it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't replicate that well. So the telomere length, they've sort of made that proportional to an aging process of the cells. So my telomeres were much older than my my actual biological age, which was a big wake-up call for me, because I felt okay. I was fatigued. I had mummy brain, I called it, brain fog. I was dealing with these food allergies, but I knew that I had poor sleep, and that's when your body repairs and regenerates, is when you sleep. And I, on average, would get 6 hours of broken sleep a night for years and years and years.
You were working 60 hours a week.
Yes, yeah. Yes. And it was a stressful job, all of that. So, the telomere thing was a kind of an awakening for me, that I needed to start again going into, I just did a deep dive. I said, I'm got all these potential future health problems. I feel okay still, but this is why this is my target audience in a way, because I was there. I can relate 100%. Stopped eating as many carbs and sugar. Sugar is kind of public enemy number 1 in my mind, and that's so hard to get off of, but we really did a good job of eliminating a lot of that. I had a serious gluten allergy. I'm not celiac disease or anything, but when I eat wheat, I had that antibody formation against the product in wheat, and it actually cross-reacted with my cerebellum, which is at my brainstem, and I was having a little bit of balance issues and things like that, which I didn't recognize. It crept on me so slowly. But when people would hand me things, they would always say, "Are you sure you have that?" before they would let go, that sort of thing. And it was all most likely because of that was happening. And that's something I should never reintroduce in my diet. I don't want to take the chance of that. So diving deep into diet and kind of upping the vegetables. It really, the more you can get away from packaged foods, the better. The local farm, even if it's non-organic, if you can't afford organic, a local non-organic product is better than almost an organic product from Mexico that has to come on a truck and, it's going to degrade all the way here.
Yeah.
So local is best.
Susceptible to everything in the environment on
Yes.
its way. Yeah.
Yes. And then kind of grass-fed meat is really important. And after diet, then mindfulness, that's a huge thing. There's a lot that I've learned about how the mind affects the biology, and it just can't be refuted. And I know a lot of people think this is woo-woo, but if you dig into kind of the science of it, which is, I'm very scientific in all of my methodology from my research training.
Yeah.
The science of it is it just makes sense, and how our thoughts actually alter our biology. And when you think something, every cell in your body hears that, in a way. So getting mindfulness, I've always been grateful, but really cultivating that gratefulness. So even on my drive into work, I was in Boston for a year and less than 6 miles from the hospital, and it took me 1 hour each way, no matter what.
Yeah.
It was horrible. So now I have a half-hour commute. I love it. Look how beautiful the trees are, the sun on those, snowy trees, all of this, the water. I'm grateful every day of my surroundings, and that helps a lot. My family, my kids, I'm a very grateful person. So mindfulness is a thing, diet and exercise.
Really quick before we get into exercise, how would you simply break down the science behind gratefulness?
Good. So it's a little more difficult than simple.
I bet. Yeah. I'm curious. And no pressure. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So when the mind has a thought, that sort of is an electrical impulse in a way, very similar to when you think, I want to wiggle my finger. You need to send a message out to do that. And when your mind has a thought, your messages are going out. You're not feeling that they are, but they are. Your messages are going out to each of your cells. And so the cells in your thoughts become a physical response. So if you're thinking that, I'm so stressed out, I'm so nervous about that, you're going to start to release some cortisol. You're going to amp up your sort of stress, flight or fight, sympathetic system. And that's going to have an effect on your biology, because now you're involved hormones, and hormones are messengers, and they affect things. If somebody's like a worrywart, they're always anxious, they have high anxiety, they're always in that state of kind of chronic fight or flight. They're not getting into the parasympathetic rest, relax, repair, that sort of thing. They're just always amped up, and that has long-term effects on your body.
Gotcha. I love bringing it always back to the cellular level of, what is cortisol doing to your cells? I'm just curious too.
Yeah, cortisol actually does a whole host of things. It's even tied in with your blood sugar control.
Okay.
So it does a lot.
Okay. Well, so getting clear, for people listening, I feel like it's nice to have steps that, to listen to something and think like, oh gosh, what do I do now? Or what am I doing? Or maybe people have already figured that out for them, but simple allergy test. Figuring out what they can do. And
so the gut, it's difficult. So if somebody comes in my office and what they're really dealing with is chronic fatigue, then I might go down a different path than somebody comes in my office and they're like, I have eczema, horrible, or they come in and they've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So I would take them down different paths. So everybody is different and where they need to start.
Right.
And I'm very big on kind of small steps which are digestible. I cannot there are a lot of times that I'm looking at this person across from me in consult and thinking I could recommend 15 things for you to do.
Yeah.
And I know I have to do what's the most important thing that they can do to start feeling better. Start there and just slowly kind of build on that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So weaving back into your daily exercises, and kind of how you keep that healthy relationship with work and being a mother of 4 children, and with all the hats that what other things do you bring into the picture?
Yeah, so I'm not huge on exercising. If I had to recommend it to anybody, it would be you can do a lot with your own body weight resistance. Kind of 4 exercises, if you just did these, 4 to 5 days a week, and it's not that long. The push-ups, pull-ups, planks, and squats. That's going to cover your major muscle groups, and you're really going to get a good workout just doing that. But one of the most important things that, I guess it's not considered exercise in the formal sense, but moving your body every hour. If you have a sedentary job, set that alarm. Make yourself get up every 45 minutes and walk around and stretch your legs. You are preventing yourself from low back pain in the future. When you sit for extended periods of time, you're getting really tight hip flexors, which are pulling on your lower lumbar spine, and that is setting you up for a future of back pain for sure.
And how does exercise help you on a cellular level? Why is it helping your cells?
Yeah, so some of it has to do with the nitric oxide, BDNF dumps that you're getting with exercise. There are a lot of studies that say that when you exercise, you release, hormones which are responsible for your happiness, your overall general well-being, and then for hormone regulation has a lot to do with muscle mass, especially testosterone. So hormones, exercise overall in conditioning, so chronic cardio is actually not good for you. You put yourself in a chronic state of inflammation or inflammaging. But bouts of cardio once a week or so are really good for you because you want to keep conditioned, and that helps with your tone of your blood vessels and all of that as well.
How would you define chronic cardio versus... or it's different per person?
Yeah, I don't want to make anybody mad, but marathon runners, chronic cardio.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Cool. Well, I know we're kind of all over the place, but I just am trying to feel out all the different avenues because there's just, like you said, there's so many different ways that you could diagnose somebody that comes in, and just wanting to leave people feeling empowered of being able to do something about their health, and also know that there are options, and there is no earliest age to start doing this, to start learning about it, because your kids are perfect examples of that. Is that one of the main reasons that you decided to home educate, was because of just their beyond just education, the food that we are bringing into the schools and stuff like that? Was that a big decision with that?
Not so much, actually, but the home education, we really wanted our children to have a strong sense of self that was developed by them rather than influenced by classmates and such.
Okay.
And we really wanted them to be able to, I guess it's more of a Montessori style, explore their interests. So cover the basics, but when they want to learn about history, or they want to learn about dinosaurs or pirates, then we can do a real kind of deep dive study of those. And it makes learning much more enjoyable for them as well. So this sense of self and confidence in who they are is the number one reason why we did it. But it was hard for me. I mean, I'm super indoctrinated in the schooling system. I've been in it for more than 14 years, I think, by the time I finished. So very difficult for me to get out of, these are all your lessons for the day. This is your grading. This is the, so hard. But I think one of the best things that we could have done for our kids as they're young, when they get older, they'll have a choice, if they're going to go to a public school, whatever they, choose to do. We're not going to hold them back from that when they're old enough and mature enough to make that decision.
Part of the learning process.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. And, I'm a product of a very small town public school. My husband was schooled in a Catholic school system. So we both have different backgrounds in schooling. Both of us are successful, and I think it's not so much the school that you put your child in, but the way that you teach them to learn.
What do you love most about your job currently?
The patient satisfaction in a way. When I first started there, I was getting hugs, I was getting thank you letters, and just to have to see people improving in their health was so empowering for me to keep doing it. So radiology was great. And I had some recurrent patients who would come to me for epidural steroid injections and stuff, but it was never the same level of care or interaction. They would just see me. I would give them consent for the procedure, do the procedure, and see you later. And I'd see them in 3 months, 6 months, whenever it wears off. So it was not nearly the same. What I really like is also, I guess, is reciprocity in a way, so that when these clients are feeling better, they're telling other people and it's spreading the word. And I'm not saying that my way is best, but I'm saying it works for a lot of people and it's good for a lot of people. And there are people who are going to match with us and there are people who aren't. We're not a clinic that you can come in and get the pill and the quick fix and go on your way. Mm-hmm. And, but are you going to feel better after your first visit or your second visit? Yeah, you are. Mm-hmm. You just, it's a time in medicine, the era, whatever it is that people, and maybe the opioid crisis has a big deal to do with that, but people are interested in alternatives for healthcare. They don't just want the pill. They don't want the quick fix. They actually want to fix this so that they know it's not going to be a lifetime of back pain. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a lifetime of dealing with this condition or this condition. I really want to get to the root cause, and ReYouvenate is sort of a mixture of integrative medicine, functional medicine, and cellular health. It's kind of its own little segment, I guess, of medicine.
Do you think our chronological age will increase if we continue on this path of optimizing, and do you think there's really no end to?
I don't know about immortality, but I definitely think we can increase it. Yeah, for sure. And I have, like I told you that I measured my telomeres.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
So I've done all of these health things, and one thing that we didn't talk about, which is the fasting mimicking diet. So after you do 3 rounds of it, and I've done 2, but after round 1, I checked my telomeres because I wanted to know, had my lifestyle changes up to this point affected my telomeres and truly kind of reversed my aging process.
You can reverse your aging process? That was a question.
Yeah.
Of you can pause it, but you can actually reverse it.
So by telomere measurements, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yep. So I've reversed it. So I was quite a bit older than myself in my telomere age. And now I think that within a few years of what I am. So I was decades, now I'm years. Wow. So in just that short time. And I plan after I've done now 2 cycles of the fasting mimicking diet. And after I finish my 3rd cycle next month, I want to repeat my telomere length again and see, just with that fasting mimicking diet, have I changed it more rapidly to now, from then to now. Okay. So
what is that process of testing your telomeres? Is that?
That's just a finger prick. They send you a kit at home. Okay. It's like not $79 to $99 through Telo Years, it's called. Okay. And you just do a little finger prick, send that sample to them.
Okay. I'll link it in the description of the episode if people are interested. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is really incredible.
Yeah. I felt great. I just got my results this week.
Yeah. So the fasting mimicking diet, is that over the course of the last couple of years, or you've done that?
Just the last 2 months. So I've done 1 round this month and 1 round last month. It's a 3-month cycle. So for 5 days out of the month, you're on the fasting mimicking diet, which is a calorie restriction diet. We use Valter Longo's Prolon products. Mm-hmm. Valter Longo is very kind of skilled researcher. He's been doing this research on human longevity for a while. The Prolon fasting mimicking diet is the first sort of diet which is patented for human longevity, which is really neat. So it's calorie restricted. There's a lot of ways you can anti-age in a way, or you can improve your longevity. But a lot of them are not comfortable, like water fasting and that sort of thing. It's hard to do and stick to. So the fasting mimicking diet, which he came up with, is neat in that the stomach sees food, but your cells see fasting. So you're a calorie restriction, and you're eating things which are okay. I mean, they don't taste horrible. You're eating soups and bars, nut bars, olives, and you kind of go day 1, you're getting about 1,200 calories. By day 3, you're at 800, and you stay there until day 5. Okay. And something really neat happens on day 3 of this diet in that you're going through autophagy, which is just programmed cell death. And the cells that it's picking to choose to recycle the components because your cells think they're starving, are the ones that are old, worn out, and senescent. So you're getting rid of all your kind of cells which are dragging you down in a way. And then days 4 and 5, you sort of get an energy boost because you get a huge boost in your stem cell production. And we're talking about hundreds of times more stem cells circulating than you had before you started the diet. And those cells are going to go around and do their job, which is repair and regenerate. So they're heading around, repairing, regenerating things. You're feeling great. And it's only 5 days. I'll tell you, at the 5th day, you're ready to eat a normal meal. But I thought, for 15 days out of my life, this is so worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially when, it's amazing that you offer stem cell therapy, but it can be a hefty cost for somebody that's interested in having it done. This sounds like another way that somebody could potentially boost their stem cells significantly. Yeah. So let's say somebody's listening to this and then they buy this fasting. Is there preparation that you had to do leading up, or things that
it's only sold by clinicians, so you have to go through a physician, and then there is an intake.
Something that you guys do, through ReYouvenate? Nice.
Yep. There's an intake because there are some certain exclusions. If you have active cancer, no. If you have diabetes, and both of those things, interestingly, they're developing a kit specifically for. So they believe by the end of this year, 2019, they'll have their cancer kit.
Wow.
So they'll have a fasting mimicking diet for cancer. And they've done a ton of research that shows with this diet, the cancer cells are more susceptible to chemotherapy and radiation, and that the normal cells are protected in a way. So it's amazing for somebody who has to go through that, to do that protection and get a better response from their treatment. And then diabetics, just because you're on restriction, they are forming one that's specifically for diabetics and has a little bit more sugar control.
Okay.
But yeah, so you get all of the food for that 5 days, and you get a lot of drink, teas, that sort of everything that you need for the 5 days. If you commit to the 3 months, it ends up being $225 a week. So how much do you pay in food? It doesn't end up that much more than you're paying to live.
Right, yeah.
And you're getting amazing health benefits from it.
That's incredible. Nice. Yeah. Wow. This is kind of an off-topic question, but being in radiology and knowing so much about cellular, how does an X-ray affect your cells?
Yeah, so X-rays, similar to flying, you're going to get DNA damage from them.
Flying will also?
Yeah. And that's why, if you have to fly a long flight, it's best to do it at night. My husband and I take red-eye flights quite a bit.
Really?
So just less radiation at that time up in the air.
Oh, wow.
But so the same thing with flying or X-rays now we'll talk about. So it does damage your DNA strands. You have internal mechanisms which can repair. So there's always these little things that are proofreading your DNA whenever it replicates or if it gets damaged. And if there's a base pair mismatch, it'll say, oh, that's not supposed to be here. It'll cut it out and put the right one in and keep going. It's very neat.
Wow.
But that can't always keep up if you're getting a lot of X-rays, a lot of CTs, and flying all the time. So that's when you need to employ some supplements like molecular hydrogen, or we've got a very strong breathing treatment at the clinic called the NanoV, which repairs helps to jumpstart that repair mechanism, and those things that you can do to sort of mitigate some of that damage.
Okay. What's the radiation during the day? Just from the
Yeah, solar.
Just from the sun. Wow. Just being closer to it, even through the metal. It's just, because it's an X-ray. It goes through, right? Yeah, wow. I would never have thought of that. Interesting. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. We're going on an hour, and I know we had talked about PMF. Do you have time to talk about that really quick?
Yeah.
For
Electromagnetic.
PEMF, yeah.
Electromagnetic
frequencies. And if people want to learn more about any of these specific things, I'll put links to them and links to ReYouvenate. So definitely reach out to Lisa if you have questions. But for the mat, I'm curious, how would you describe what a PEMF mat is doing, and what are the benefits of doing it?
Okay. So PEMF has been around for a long time. It was first FDA approved in 1979 for bone healing, and it's been used quite a bit in Europe and just starting to infiltrate the United States. But in the United States, NASA has done a large amount of research on PEMF, and that's where I've researched it quite a bit through NASA. And the reason is that when their astronauts go into space, they get lack of gravity, you get muscle wasting and bone mineral density loss fairly rapidly. So they pulse in space to help mitigate both of those things. So that's something it's good for, is bone mineral density. And I'll get back to the benefits, but I wanted to give a little bit of credibility first.
Yeah.
So major sports teams, Olympics, Tony Robbins, all of these people are using PEMF because of all the amazing benefits of it. And how it works, if you think of each of our cells like a cell phone battery. So the cell needs to have a charge across the membrane, and it uses that charge to be able to carry out its intracellular functions in a way. That's called a membrane potential. And that membrane potential has to measure up to a certain level. And if it falls below that level, then the cell cannot keep up with all of those repair mechanisms we were talking about, replication and all of the things it needs to do. So that's degeneration and disease can start to set in because the cell can't keep up. So what the pulse electromagnetic fields are doing, so at ReYouvenate, we use the Pulse Pro machine, and inside of each of the treatment mats, there's a coil, and electricity is going to flow through that coil. There's going to be no electricity coming out. It's not like a TENS unit, if some people know about that. But what does happen when you coil electricity is that you create a magnetic field perpendicular to the coiled electricity. So a magnetic field is pulsing through your body, and that field is responsible for recharging the cellular membrane. So the cellular membrane, how does it get uncharged as we age? That happens naturally, just like our cell phones as they age. You have to plug them in at 4 p.m. instead of them lasting all day. So that happens naturally as we age. But if you put on top of that any degeneration or illness or disease, it's going to, or injury even, it's going to use up that membrane potential in a quicker fashion. So those cells are really kind of struggling to keep up. And what they're able to do then is... what they do then is make less energy for each cell. So they're less ATP. And when you can recharge the cell membrane, you can then carry out all those intracellular processes. But it also, anytime that you send an electric or a magnetic field through a cell, you induce electroporation, which is just a fancy word for making the cell membrane more porous. Okay. So that water and nutrients can come into the cell easier and toxins actually come out. So you do detoxify a tiny bit with each session that you're doing. And then when you charge the cell membrane correctly, this gets into a little bit of the negative EMFs fields. So negative EMFs are from our cell phones, our laptops, those sort of things. And if you use your laptop for just 8 minutes and you take a little blood sample and look under the microscope, your red blood cells actually become very sticky to each other. And it messes with the membrane, like the membrane charge. So they stick together and they form these stack of coin formations, or rouleau formations, they're called. And you can imagine if somebody has, say, peripheral vascular disease, where they've got already plaquing and narrowing, that it's harder for that blood flow to go through this, or coronary artery disease. So if you do the same thing and you put somebody on a PEMF mat, and then for 8 minutes, take their blood and look under the microscope, those cells are going to be nicely spread out and flowing freely. So it really improves circulation. Same thing, go ahead.
So somebody has their cell phone in their pocket, similar? Mm-hmm. Similar thing?
Yeah, that's why.
Daily, right?
Yes, you get one of these.
What is that?
This is a safe shield, so it kind of shields any EMF coming out. So most of the time, it's good to use your phone on speaker, but you can't always for privacy. So this completely blocks any EMF coming towards your head. If you have to talk on your phone, you can talk right through it.
Really?
So
that's really cool.
And that just comes out, magnets in, so you can take it out, take pictures or whatever you need to do. So safe shield. And they do make a tray kind of that goes underneath of your laptops too, especially if you're using them on your laps, especially for females, because you only get one set of eggs. You're going to expose them to to bad EMFs continuously when you're doing all this laptop work.
That's scary because I've burned holes through my pocket just having my phone in my pocket, because I'm walking around all the time and I just have my phone on. So if you have to carry your phone, not that I have to, but does airplane mode help with that?
Yes. Yeah, that'll turn off that transmission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's, something to be aware of. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. And so other than, in northern Michigan, still inundated by them, but not as much as an inner city, what other things would you recommend to be aware of
for the bad EMFs?
Yeah, just
so what Wi-Fi in your own house, use it during the day, but we have a switch at night that's next to our bed that we can just hit, and all the Wi-Fi in the whole house goes down, so nobody's kind of exposed to that overnight as we're sleeping. There's no reason for it to be on. People all the time will like just use their cell phone right into the end of bed, and then they'll set it down and it'll stay on, transmitting right by their head on the nightstand all night. Make sure that your cell phone's in airplane mode overnight. That's a big one. And get those protectors, these safe sleeves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Safe. Is that what it's called? Safe
sleeve. There's one called Defender Shield, I think, is another company. There's probably more than that. I don't know.
So that sticky blood that you're talking about, is that something that then just eventually dissipates, but if you continue to just keep using something like...
No, you're just going to keep your sticky blood cells.
That's so amazing. Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's invisible to us, and that's why I think so many people... And then I think of people that are just like, well, prove it. But you can prove it. It's, you're...
Yeah, you could easily prove it with just a drop of blood and a microscope.
Yeah. Wow.
And I mean, we can go a whole another hour episode about cell phones.
Yeah, we'll definitely have another future episode. But so the PEMF, they counteract what we have encountered with the EMFs, and then also beyond dissipating them, are they restructuring them in any specific way, or it's just...
No, not so much.
Okay.
No, you can get devices like the one called a wave rider, which you can put in your house, which sort of neutralizes some of those bad EMFs. There are some devices which do it. Especially if you have a smart meter, those are like the worst. You got to put it into a little Faraday cage, or if it's by your bedroom, maybe, block it somehow.
What is that?
Smart meter. Smart meters that they no longer have to have somebody come out to your house to read your electric meter. These smart meters are communicating all the time. Do you
install that, or do people...
The smart meter, you would just get it installed. They just come when you're not home and replace the old ones. It's happened. It's probably already happened throughout this city.
Okay.
It's a couple of years ago is when they tried to install ours.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You said no.
Yeah. So we pay an extra fee now, and we have to pay for the guy to come out and read our meter, but that's so worth it for us.
Yeah. Well, do you think it's because we haven't seen the long-term side effects? Because these are just right on the scene... Phones, iPads,
yes,
computers.
And everybody just wants faster. So when they're selling the idea of 5G, which is already in LA and other big cities, they're saying, well, you're going to have almost instantaneous downloads. It's almost instantaneous how fast 5G is. But 5G is, it cannot travel as far as 2G. So you need a lot more transformers. You're going to have a lot more bad EMFs from that. And then all of the studies on 2G that just came out say like this is causing cancer in animals. If you look into smart meters, the same kind of bad EMFs, you can see, there are pictures of smart meters where the bush that's next to it at somebody's house outside in their shrubbery is now dead anywhere in like a certain radius of that EMF meter.
Whoa.
And they transmit, especially if you have one of the hubs which all the other ones communicate to, and it's sending out the signal. It's a very even stronger signal then.
And that's just because the plants cannot just handle that amount of...
They're sensitive, like frogs, dragonflies, all very sensitive to EMFs. And then if, there's one clinician, Dr. Jack Cruz, he's a neurosurgeon, and he's really up to date on 5G and the potential health effects of that. And he's got sort of at his house moss that grows on trees, and he knows that the moss will get out of control if 5G comes to his area because the moss is going to thrive. So there's some things that thrive and some things that get killed from it, but very, very detrimental to our health.
And so we know that it makes, our blood react. Why does it? Did you explain that?
So the negative EMFs, it messes with the charge on the cellular membrane. Okay. It disrupts the calcium magnesium pumps. It's kind of probably a little technical. Yeah. But it affects you on a cellular level for sure.
Okay. Well, definitely going to be turning off my Wi-Fi and making some strides, because I feel like I've heard that, and that's another big thing with even Bluetooth headphones. Everybody's got them, but then you've got two EMFs in your ears blasting through your...
Yes.
I mean, they're so convenient, but there's definitely, I think, you don't want to find out further down the line, just because it's convenient doesn't mean that it's... and that you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not affecting you. So
yes, and I think that when I was a neurosurgery researcher and I was visiting the clinicals, like I told you, there were 3 young girls that were in their 30s that all had brain tumors, and they grew up on the same street. And to me, that opened my eyes to, whoa, there's something environmental. I don't know what it was. I don't know if they ever found a cell tower or whatever was on that street. But to me, then I instantaneously knew there could not be 3 girls who grew up at the same time on this one street and all developed brain tumors for no reason. This is not coincidence now. Mm-hmm. So that kind of sparked my interest in environmental factors a lot too, and just being very careful about what you can't see.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know we've been all over the place, but I'm just really grateful to get your story out to Petoskey. And for people that have never been to ReYouvenate, what would be, do you have any calls to action or things you'd like to leave us with? People that are interested, but maybe waiting for the other 2 people to come tell them about it.
I'll be one of them. No, I think, if you're interested in really taking control of your health, if you've got a chronic problem and you're unhappy with the outcome thus far and all the avenues you've tried, or if you just really would love to avoid surgery or any additional medications, that's when you would think of giving us a try at ReYouvenate. And I think, there's a whole host of things that we do through the clinic, and there's almost always something that we are able to help with through the advanced technologies, or just really honing in on your overall health and controlling inflammation and working at the cellular level.
Are you one of a kind, or are there other places like ReYouvenate?
So as far as I know, I think so. There is a similar clinic which has now opened up in California.
Okay.
So along the same lines, they have a lot of the advanced technologies. And recently, I think within the last month or so, they started to offer also stem cell therapy. So that one's probably the closest that I've found.
So from Michigan, California is the closest that
I've discovered. There might be some,
there
but
might
yeah.
be, but that's,
yeah.
They're far and few between currently.
Yeah. Well, it's really kind of a joint venture of my husband's and my educational experience, which we have such a vast difference in our background.
Yeah.
So put all of that together and sort of build this, what we call a treasure chest of advanced technologies, and just bottled up all of this clinical knowledge and in medicine and cells and, all of this that we've put together to really offer a unique approach to healthcare and a true preventative way of dealing with things, even if you're not at preventing disease level, preventing future degradation.
Mm-hmm. We're definitely going to have another podcast at some point, because I want to talk more about the future of ReYouvenate and as it grows. And so people can look forward to that next episode eventually. So,
great.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yep.
Thank you, Solomon.